Welcome back to Phazon Labs, powered by World 1-1. We are the premier Metroid fan game podcast for all your Metroid desires. So, this week, I am joined by my partner in crime, Isabel Bramman.
Hello.
And I am your host, Larry the Bearded Wonder. So, this week, we're taking a look at a 2-game crossover. So not just one, you get 2. Lucky you, because we're here to give you the best value for your listen.
Mm-hmm.
So this week, I'm taking a look at a thought that was inspired, or at least spurred on, by the folks over at the Omega Metroid podcast, which, if you're not already listening to them, you should be. So go check them out. Big shout out to Andy and Dak. So we're going to do a callback here to the Game Boy Advance days.
Mm-hmm.
Isabel, do you remember, as far back as the Game Boy Advance days, there was a crossover of 2 games where Spyro and Crash Bandicoot crossed worlds?
Oh, I think I've heard of that, actually. And
yeah,
I think I have, because those are made by the same company, right?
Okay,
no, I think I have heard of that. And then didn't they do another crossover, or am I not thinking right?
not that I remember, but
Okay.
the one that I know they did, there was Crash Purple and Spyro Orange, and it was all, so one of them was about Crash Bandicoot in Spyro's world, and the other was Spyro in Crash's world.
Okay, yes, no, I do remember that. Hearing
Right.
about that.
Those were actually pretty cool. So I was thinking, we're going to take Samus and we're going to shove her into Hyrule. And then we're going to take Link and we're going to stuff him on an alien planet like Zebes or SR-388.
Mm-hmm.
And I've thought this out because the question becomes, how do you integrate those two? What do you do with those? And I believe I've come up with a solution.
Okay.
So Samus gets sucked into Hyrule, and Samus's game. You know what? No, we're going to start with Link's game. We'll come back to Samus. So Link gets sucked over to, I don't know, we'll say Zebes for all intents and purposes.
Mm-hmm.
And Link is going to be exploring around Zebes in the 2D side-scroll format, finding Link's traditional power-ups and abilities, but they've all been adapted for a 2D side-scroll style Metroidvania. And then we do the inverse. So instead of that, top-down world map thing that Link normally does in his 2D games, we're working on the side, which Link's had a little experience with Zelda 2.
Mm-hmm.
The best 2D Zelda game, by the way, and anybody that disagrees with me can suck it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that comment's
controversial.
Eddie.
Why would you say something so controversial yet so brave?
Because it's correct.
Okay, keep going.
So, Link's got all kinds of stuff that, can work here. Things like the Pegasus boots for getting across long distances. He's got his hook shot, which fundamentally works like a grapple beam. Now, here's the interesting part, though. Link's still running around with the Master Sword, which means the combat's all close quarters combat instead of ranged. So I feel like that's a fun way to kind of mix this up franchise-wise a little bit. and then you get to experience awesome Zelda bosses in 2D side-scroll form instead, because they all got sucked over there with them. I think that's how I want to experience a Zelda game. Just that wildly different. I want to see a development team figure out how to adapt all those from top down to 2D to make them, exploratory and a big connected cohesive map. So now on the other side. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just thinking, so basically it would be more akin to like a reimagining of Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, but in a sort of Metroidvania-esque style.
Yeah.
Is what you're thinking. Okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
But I also want to see Link, displaced into that alien world. It's like when he lands, his traditional green tunic and hat and everything change into like full-blown spacesuit power armor, but it's all themed and decked out in Link's traditional style and colors. And then we get to do the inverse with Samus, who's now, found herself trapped in Hyrule in the top-down 2D perspective, where all those Chozo powers and abilities have been sprinkled across the land, and she's wandering around and, finding various dungeons that she goes in, and you usually find a power-up about halfway through that dungeon, and you use it to make it through, and, reworking all those into a top-down format, and then also reworking it so that she's still working with her arm cannon. So instead of Zelda's traditional close quarters top-down combat, it's top-down ranged combat. She has a projectile weapon that Link typically does not. And then adapting, all sorts of things like I want to see the screw attack and the space jump and the morph ball, adapted for use in a top-down 2D Zelda-style game instead.
Yeah.
That idea really just grabs at me. And then to see various Metroid boss fights reworked and completely redone for a top-down style of boss fight gameplay to totally upend traditional boss fights that we've seen in the Metroid series over and over again. I think it's a really neat way to shake up the status quo for both of those franchises, while at once making them still feel familiar. Because it's like, oh, I know this power up. I've used this, a dozen times throughout, 30 some years. But now it also is in a different setting, which means you kind of have to think about it a little differently. And then, of course, Samus's power suit, it keeps that traditional gold and red color scheme, but it comes down to, leather and fabric garb, and yeah, I want that.
Ooh, I'm almost thinking of like a Sheikah style Samus suit, like a Sheikah technology, actually. That'd be really sick.
That'd be interesting.
So I'm kind of going on a little bit of a tangent here, because there is sort of a game that I think they could take inspiration from for at least the Metroid and Hyrule portion of it, and that is the SNES game Terranigma, which is a game that I dearly love, but has never been released past the SNES stage, and was only released in like Australia and Europe. But
that explains why I've never heard of this. This is a new one on me.
Yes, it's very good. Highly recommend. But like there are some interesting elements to it, because it's like a top-down style like Zelda. But the main character, Ark, he has a staff instead of like a sword for fighting, and he can utilize a different variety of moves, and a couple of the moves that he has involve like him like moving forward in like a spinning attack, I think, which I think would be interesting for like implementing like the screw attack or something like that, because how that works is like you have to input like a certain amount of input, like a certain button input, and then he'll go forward a certain direction, but he'll do massive damage, you know, on any enemy in that direction. And like there are some other elements, like he has like a shield that will like deflect projectiles back. And actually that game also has some like very light sort of Metroidvania Zelda-like things where you come across an area and then you can't get out until you find a certain item, and then you can use that item in other parts of the world. So I feel like as though they could take inspiration from Terranigma, at least for like the Metroid portion. And any chance I can get to talk about Terranigma, I think is a good chance, because that game, there's a petition going out to bring that game to modern consoles, and I feel like it should come back. So, but yeah, so I'm thinking like if they use that game and like are able to bring like screw attack and other things like that into a 2D top-down format, that could be a really interesting way to bring different puzzles, different elements to the Metroid portion of that. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm upset that I've never seen or heard of this Terranigma before.
Yeah, it was published by the company Quintet for Square before it became Square Enix, but the reason why it never got to the US was because Square shut down its US branch right before the game came out. So even though there was an English translation, it just never came to the US. So it's kind of like an inverse Chrono Trigger, is that the US got Chrono Trigger and Europe didn't, but they got Terranigma and we didn't. So but yeah, it's an interesting story, and it desperately needs to come to modern consoles because it's been stuck on the SNES, unless if you're like me who emulated it like a filthy pirate. So, but yeah,
well,
so go ahead.
You know, too, now I'm just kind of wondering if it ever made it onto like the virtual console anywhere, because I know back on the Wii, they were bringing over to virtual console numerous games that never originally had a stateside release.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, it's never been released past the SNES because Quintet had went out of business. Yeah. So, but anyway, back to the Zelda portion of this. I'm thinking, because I played the Link's Awakening Switch version, and that game has elements that you go into 2D as well, the side-scrolling portion. And those were implemented pretty well. So I feel like as though they've been like testing the waters with that, or did in the past. And they could definitely, I think, implement that easier than Metroid in a top-down. I mean, it would work. I think it would just take a lot more work for the Metroid one, if that makes sense.
It does.
So, but yeah, I'm trying to think, like, because I feel like as though this would be a really interesting like anniversary game, that you would release them both at the same time on like at the same cartridge.
Oh, definitely.
And then there would be a randomizer in them that you would get power-ups from one, and then you could use them in another one as part of the randomizer, which would be really interesting, and link back to the Link to the Past Super Metroid randomizers. Those are quite cool to see.
Oh yeah.
So.
Well, especially too, they've had they've done like GDQ races where you pick up an item in like Link to the Past, and then it switches over to you playing Super Metroid for a bit, and then back and forth.
Yeah. So I think that would be like the perfect way to even, I mean, like it would take quite a bit of, you know, I think getting used to it, I think, for the first time. But I think it would be a really interesting way to do that. And like I said, like it's possible to switch from 2D to top down because Link's Awakening did it. So I feel like as though that's an entirely possible way to go around that. So yeah, I'm really liking this so far. My question is though, what causes this rift in time and space that throws Link into Zebes and Samus into Hyrule? What do you think causes that?
Oh, I'm sure Ganon's attempted something insanely stupid.
Actually, I think it would be interesting if it was something like a third party, like
Ooh.
And then at the very end, like if we go the route of like the games are sort of like linked together, at the very end you would fight this third party using both Link and Samus at the same time. Like I was playing Cadence of Hyrule, and at the very final boss of that you have to use Zelda, Cadence, and Link all together to be able to defeat Ganon, which I think is a really interesting take on that boss. So it'd be really interesting to, I think, implement that. So
What if Ganon somehow figures out how to hijack Mother Brain, including the big, like, final form from Super?
ooh, Calamity Mother Brain.
Right.
I don't like that. That scares me.
I feel like we're gonna end up with like Calamity Ridley at the very least.
Oh, that scares me even more.
Yeah.
Considering how much I struggled against the Blight Ganons, I don't like that. So I am very afraid
that's
now.
what it is. We get Calamity Mother Brain at the end, but we also get like Blight Kraid and Blight Ridley and Blight Phantom.
No. This is like my worst nightmare.
I feel like I'm auditorially listening to an anxiety attack happening right now.
This game is already turned from the worst to the best, or the best to the worst, I feel. With just that simple implementation. So, but no, I actually I think that'd be really interesting to have the Calamity infect other parts of that. But I also like the idea of like a third party coming in, something that's like not from either world or from, you know, like a mashup of both worlds, which I think would be interesting. Would be Calamity Mother Brain or something like that.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, you know what? I know just the thing to string this together.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just perfectly weird enough. What if that third party influence that was responsible for all this was Master Hand from Smash?
I like that.
Yeah.
That would be perfect. Or what is that one? The one who's like the god, Taboo or something like that? From Brawl. I can't remember. I think so. From Brawl, I think is from like name is Taboo or something like that. If I remember correctly. But I just dabbled a little bit into Brawl. I was not very good at it, so it was, yeah, that's my guess anyway. But I think I actually like Master Hand though. I think that would be very funny, but also thematically appropriate because it's pulling the strings. So
it feels appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Especially because like if we go the route of these games being like linked together again, then I feel like as though it would be kind of fun to, you know, like have jokes based on each other's conventions, like you know, like Link crawling around or whatever instead of turning into a morph ball. I think would be funny. Or, you know, like Samus like refusing to smash pots or whatever, something like that. I think that would be a fun, you know, like little gags like that.
Oh, definitely.
So I feel like so this would be like a fun opportunity to poke fun at each other's franchises. So yeah, I can really see this like playing like the knife's edge of being like serious but having like lighthearted moments too. So kind of like Terranigma. So yeah. But so those are my thoughts. But yeah.
So let me tell you what else gets me super excited about this idea.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really loving the thought of hearing Metroid themes in that kind of fantasy, whimsical, epic score, and vice versa. And hearing Zelda themes done in kind of
synth style,
a little bit synth, a little
electronic.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
I'm liking everything about that thought.
Yeah, I feel like as though I really want like Cass to show up and like him to be like the constant in both worlds, just be there randomly and just like sing ballads about the two. And I feel like as though that'd be really fun because like Cass is a giant bird, so he wouldn't be out of place in either Metroid or, you know, Zelda. So so I feel like as though that would be a fun, another, you know, kind of thing that, you know, fits thematically, but also is a little bit silly and a little bit goofy and a little bit like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense because there's giant birds in Metroid as well as in Zelda. So I like that a lot.
But yeah, so I think this is a good place to kind of wrap this one. I'm okay with this being a little bit shorter this week, but I'm gonna put a name on it. And honestly, I flat out want your idea because I'm in the rare situation here where I just don't have a good title for this fiasco.
I feel like as though we should call it something like Fiasco, something like the Great like Nintendo Fiasco. Just, but that sounds more like a Super Smash Brothers boss. Anyways, so but like something that sounds that would be good for because this is more of like a 2 games in 1. I almost feel like as though we could tie it together and call it like The Legend of Metroid. That'd be interesting. It sounds kind of stupid, but what do you think of The Legend of Metroid?
It's not bad. I've got one for you though. It just came to me while you were talking.
Okay.
It just popped in my head. Since this is a 2-game set, each game needs a title. For the one with Link in space, because he's been taken out of Hyrule, he's been taken out of his mythology. He's no longer the hero of time. So Link's game is Link, the hero of space. And Samus's game is Samus, Hyrule Hunter.
Ooh, I like Hyrule Hunter a lot. I almost like Legend of Zelda, Space Word Sword.
It'll be the most controversial title in 2 series at once.
Yes, but that sounds really stupid, but I just that's what came to my mind. But yeah, I really like Hyrule Hunter a lot, though. It sounds like a Monster Hunter kind of style, which I think would be really, yeah. So I really like those two games together. Yeah. So
Yes.
I think that'd be perfect. Yeah.
Well, beautiful then. Well, in that case, let's wrap this up here. I want to say thank you to everybody that tuned in this week to listen to our insanity. I want to say thank you to my partner in crime, Isabel Bramman, and leave you with a vitally important message, and that is to buy Metroid Dread.
Yes, do it.
So that's absolutely critical to mission success here.
Mm-hmm.
And with that last reminder out of the way, we'll see you all next mission. Say goodnight, everybody.
Good night.
Peace.